everyone. Thank you for being patient. This is Emma with March on the Pentagon, and I've got Cindy Sheehan here and our guest, Forrest Palmer from Wrong Kind of Green. We were supposed to start about 15 minutes ago, but had a technical difficulty, so hopefully you are all seeing this now, and I'm going to start sharing at some places, so I'll hand it over to Cindy and to Forrest. We're going to talk about basically the absence of the issue of war and the war machine and the military-industrial complex in the climate, the popular climate movement that's happening right now. It's been ignored for years, but it's time to expose it and bring that to light now that people are kind of on the environmental and climate bandwagon. So I'm going to duck out and hand it over to you, Cindy, so we can find all of our viewers that are not quite here yet.
Okay, awesome. So maybe, hi Forrest, thank you so much. Maybe before we get started with you, and this is being recorded, so people can watch it, later if they can't watch it live. So I do want to make a few announcements. Our Rage Against the War Machine is starting in 12 days, I think I counted, and we're working really hard to get that going, and people can go to March on the Pentagon or marchonpentagon.com for more information. We do have a rageometer for donations. We needed to raise $2,000 in this last push, so we can actually, fund our grassroots, very, organic protests in Washington, D.C. And so our rageometer went from like everything's okay to upset to like annoyed or whatever. So we're now at mildly outraged against the war machine. We went ahead to outraged against the war machine on our rageometer, and I think Emma's going to put that up. So we have a $5 challenge. If you can afford to donate $5 and then challenge other people to donate $5 to this. And so, Forrest, are you still there? Oh my God, I think we lost Forrest again. There you are. Forrest,
okay.
Can you hear me? And yeah. So we put up the rageometer and then I didn't see you. So I just, for, full disclosure, March on the Pentagon has been addressing this issue since we've been we're a very new organization. We've only been around for almost 2 years. We started in January of 2018, I think. And then we had a Women's March on the Pentagon last year. In October of 2018. And this is one of our issues, is calling out the Pentagon for its horrible pollution and record of using fossil fuels. There's been so much information lately because of the new green movement. And I read that the Pentagon uses more fossil fuels than 140 countries do, not combined, but like on the list, Pentagon's #1. And so now, Forrest, we find ourselves in a situation where there's this new environmental movement that's being led by young people, and which is, we don't have any opposition to that. What we have an opposition to is it seems like the groups that are controlling this movement are very opposed to addressing the Pentagon as one of the biggest climate destroyers on the planet. And I noticed this happening in 2014 when I went to Washington, D.C. for that big climate march that 350.org and sponsored, and I would talk to people and I'd say, what about the Pentagon? How come you're not addressing the Pentagon? Oh, no, the Pentagon is actually one of the leading some lady told me this, one of the leading environmental organizations in the world, because they're really working hard to get off fossil fuels and blah, 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 blah. So what do you have to say to that, Forrest? I know you work with Corey Morningstar and Wrong Kind of Green, and you've been also very outspoken about this.
Well, I think that, well, first and foremost, good afternoon. But I think that you can just characterize that as just propaganda. And what I mean by that is you see a lot of the fossil fuel companies that are also talking about greening themselves. ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, so on and so forth. So that's nothing more so than just the media saying, okay, well, we have this particular problem. In the same way, whether it's the public or private sector, you have people who sit in boardrooms and then they try and decide, okay, well, how can we make this benefit us? What is that we can do to placate people and give them the assumption that we're doing something about it? So it's nothing more than that. And then people just basically buy the company line. And then they'll go and they'll regurgitate it and then so on and so forth down the line. They don't do any investigation. It's just something for them to digest and say, oh, well, someone is doing something about this, right? And then also, I like to bring up this point. One of the worst things that you can do in this society, or pretty much anyone, is to be unpatriotic. That's the third rail of anything, is to talk against the government or your state or anything. So to talk about the military, go against them, is something that not many organizations are willing to do, and not many people, because there is no quicker way to be ostracized than to actually say something against the American military.
Well, that's also very true. But it's very disingenuous. Like Bill McKibben of 350.org wrote an op-ed, I think he wrote it for the New York Review of Books, where he actually defended the Pentagon, and saying that it's not them, it's us. So I want to tell you, Forrest, I don't use plastic straws. I don't use plastic. I recycle, I renew, I reuse, I repurpose. I do all of these things. I don't own a car. But to me, of course, there's billions of people on the planet and there's one Pentagon. But to me, we can't put all of the blame on the people and say we have to we have to be the ones to completely change our lifestyles. And I'm not against that, but to not say, let's get the number one polluter and the number one user of fossil fuels out of the picture.
I think that, and let me preface this by saying that I'm not a Bill McKibben fan.
Right.
I'm not a 350.org fan because, to be quite honest with you, we're at about 410 parts per million in the atmosphere. So that ship sailed a long time ago as far as 350 is concerned. I know there are some geoengineers that think that somehow you can bring the carbon down. That's a whole nother topic of a conversation for a later date. But that being said, just like I intimated before, it's hard to go against the company line. The Department of Defense, if you go against them, then it's going to be hard for somebody like Bill McKibben and 350.org to get funding, to be quite honest with you. It's going to be hard to get money from the Rockefellers. It's going to be hard to get money from all these foundations if he was to go out on that branch. And that's why you really can't find that much literature about the NGOs talking against the military. They just talk in more voluminous terms about, okay, well, we need to stop using so much carbon, I drive cleaner cars, and so on and so forth. But to put the onus on the Department of Defense will make you a target. So that's why he actually wrote his op-ed in that particular way. And I read it, and he made some, I'd say, good points, good in quotations, in that if you look at how many barrels of oil the United States uses, the Department of Defense uses per day, is 300,000. Now, we use 20 million per day in the United States cumulatively, right? That isn't that much. It's about, I think, less than 1%. But here's the thing that 300,000 barrels of oil does do. It provides you the power, both domestically and globally, to get that 20 million. That is why we have 800 military posts across the globe. So that we can have all of these different consumer items that we use, and we all use them. But the regular return on investment for oil and gas historically has been 100 to 1. That was the benchmark. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're about 6 to 1. So you give 1 barrel of oil, you get 6 back. Used to be the benchmark was you give 1, get 100 back. Now, when it comes to the military, this is what people have to realize. With that 300,000 barrels that the military uses across the globe, we get our 20 million. You understand? So that's a return of, off the top of my head, 10, 3 million, 20, 6 million. So that's about 80% return on investment, right? So you get, for that one barrel that's used with the military, you're going to get 80 back. So you have to address that in all its different facets, not just how much the military uses, but also how they are able to provide us the cooperation, in quotations, from other nations to get their resources. Because if we didn't have that military, then they will keep their resources for themselves, which is why you hear a number of politicians talking about, okay, well, we want to make sure that we are energy, not an importer. We do everything domestically. So we'll be able to take care of ourselves and not have to bring in any oil and gas, which is a fantasy. And then also the oil and gas that we do produce here, that goes out on the open market. I live in Houston, Texas. These refineries do not sell just domestically, they sell internationally, right? Because they want to get the best return for their dollar. And that more than likely is not just going to stay here in the United States. So that's what the military provides us. The largesse to be able to go to all these different nations and get oil, not just domestically, but internationally.
Right. And so also these organizations like 350.org, they are very tied in with the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party, like, for example, Barack Obama, you know, he's been bragging about when he was president, the U.S. became, you know, a leading producer of oil and fossil fuels. And you know, and they're part of the war machine. And so if you really like are beholden to the Democrats and tie yourself too close to the Democrat Party, how can you criticize the Pentagon?
Oh, of course. Well, you do that for political reasons. That is why, you know, like Naomi Klein and all these different people, they are happy in seeing somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez come to Washington. She is their, I don't want to say official mouthpiece, but she's somebody who's going to be able to speak for them and say how the Green New Deal is something that we should follow.
Oops, I can't hear Forrest anymore. Can you all hear me? Did we lose Forrest, Emma? Now I can't hear Emma.
Oh, good. I can hear Forrest. Let me bring him back.
I couldn't hear
coming
you.
Back.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Right. Hi, Forrest. Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, okay. I can hear you guys well.
Okay, good. Your picture froze a while ago. So it was just a still image of you, and now your picture is gone, but we can still hear you. So nobody can see you, but we can hear you.
Well, I will continue down the path I was going down. Long story short, the Democratic Party only has a few politicians that are willing to speak for, say, 350.org and Naomi Klein and all these different people. Right? It's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and maybe a handful of others. Now, that is the only way that they're going to be able to get the average American to be able to know exactly what the Green New Deal is, what it's about, how it's going to somehow fix the military problem. I think that they said that they want to cut it down to 60% or something of that nature. And from what I've read, is more so a transition of people that would go through, let's say, the poverty draft into the military. Well, you would give them a nice Green New Deal job so that they won't have to go and be a part of the military. So it's more so just transition of manpower from one space to another. And not to say to get rid of the military. Once again, they're just talking about downsizing more so than anything else. No one's talking about getting rid of the 800 bases across the globe. Nobody's talking about getting rid of the $1 billion embassy that we have in Iraq, which means that we're not going to go anywhere just logistically. You're just going to scale down the number of people that's there. So the fact that they will not talk about the military being a problem is the reason why all these different politicians who agree with the Green New Deal will also have to go back to their constituents, where a lot of them also have different military outposts and corporations and things of that nature that they have to answer to. So they don't have to go ahead and say, oh, well, we're just going to totally get rid of the military. What we'll do is make it a more peaceful organization and one that's not going to destroy the environment.
Well, it's not just about fossil fuel use, of course. Like you said, the U.S. military is used to protect the oil company, protect the oil companies, protect the oil company interests, expand more, more territory that is oil rich. Does anybody think that Venezuela is not about the fact that they have the most fossil fuel stores in the biggest? I don't know what you want to say, but another thing is that everywhere the U.S. military goes, like when they have a base or something, it's a Superfund site. They have, like some people have pointed out, that using atomic bombs, atomic testing, depleted uranium, Agent Orange, that all these things that are still destroying, and not just like, they haven't just destroyed the countries that the U.S. is occupying. This stuff has been brought here to the United States. Babies of veterans are being born with birth defects. People still in Vietnam, in Iraq, Afghanistan, their ecosystems have been spoiled by the U.S. military. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, in order to get a good understanding of all that, you would really have to go through the history of military engagement.
Can you hear Forrest? I can't hear Forrest.
Yeah.
No. Oh.
Okay, are you there, Forrest?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you started with, we have to understand the history, and then we lost you.
The history of industrial in the 20th century, right? So you have to go back to World War I, and that's when we actually had fossil fuels that affected the way that we carried out between bombs and things of that nature. So then you go into World War II, and then what did we have? We had the nuclear bomb. Now, when you have all these different ways of committing the most atrocious acts in the world on people, then you also have to find some type of domestic usage for them. Really fast, Eisenhower said that, okay, well, we have a nuclear bomb. We can't keep dropping nuclear bombs on people. So what are we going to do as far as nuclear capacity is concerned? Domestic capacity is concerned. So we started having nuclear. At one time, Eisenhower said that he thought that nuclear was going to be the panacea for people all over the globe to live like we do here in the United States.
Crap.
Well, in order to,
I don't think he knows when we can't hear him.
No.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Can hear you.
Yeah. Well, really fast, what you're seeing now is that these nuclear waste sites and all these different munitions and everything else is nothing more but externalities. And whenever you have industrial civilization like we have, and we commit war in these particular ways, then you can't just expend all your energy on the enemy. Eventually, these things are going to have some type of waste and refuse, and we're going to have to deposit them somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then we've done it both internationally and, just as you said, Cindy, we've done it domestically also.
Well, just historically, I loved your historic perspective that mustard gas from World War I was changed into chemotherapy. So also Agent Orange comes back into the United States, I believe, in Roundup. And, yes. And Roundup is causing the literal destruction of, ecologies here. It's killing the bees, killing butterflies, killing us, killing people who are like groundskeepers who use it. So like you said, they can't keep dropping atomic bombs. They can't keep spreading Agent Orange, but they have to find so-called peacetime use. So Monsanto, DuPont, the Rockefellers, so the Rockefellers and the oil industry, mustard gas is a fossil fuel thing. So they had to, come back and develop more uses for it, which over these decades has caused nothing but harm.
Yes, well, you brought up Dow Chemical and DuPont, and those are companies that started, as you said, in World War I. They developed a lot of the chemical weapon systems that were used for that particular war. And then once it becomes peacetime, as you said, then these industries and these corporations, what they do is they try and find some way to use them outside of just killing people. So if you look at our agricultural system, it's based upon petrochemicals. So, and once again, that's something else that people need to address as far as the Green New Deal is concerned, because right now our food system is one that's based upon transportation and things of that nature. And the average distance that an item on your plate has traveled is between 1,500 and 1,700 miles. So we have to address that also. But to bring it back to the military aspect of it, there's no way that we're going to be able to transport all these things and have these supply lines from one place. And that's what all this is. This is supply lines from one from one country and even corporation to a domestic market. So in the same way that in Roman times and all these other different civilizations that have come and gone over the years, what they have to do is just always get as many resources that they can to replenish. So the military is really just doing what it needs to do in order for us all to have what it is that we go about our daily lives purchasing and buying in this consumer system. So,
right. And I, like we said, like the U.S. exports oil and it imports oil and it creates oil, it creates gas, it creates other fossil fuel products. But like you said, the food on our plates travels such a far distance. For example, Great Britain exports as much milk as it imports. Why? Why is that? Why don't they just keep all the friggin' milk in their country and drink it there instead of exporting and importing milk? It's just like crazy how devoted, how in probably a little over 100 years that civilization has become so dependent on fossil fuels, and how a few people have gotten so immorally, atrociously wealthy off of that.
Well, as far as the import and export of any particular material, that's the guys in the boardrooms who decide how exactly that's going to affect the stock price and what's going to help them as far as selling it in one particular place and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different facets that are involved with that. I'm not a financial guy. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, but yet and still I know how it has facilitated any number of jobs I've had as far as like, okay, well, we need to transport this here or trade this here, which made no logical sense, but yet and still we had to do it, right? Mm-hmm. In order for the guys' stock prices for whatever corporation to go up. It's a real decrepit and immoral system, for lack of a better term, and it makes no sense, to be quite honest with you, because you are right. You would want to keep your milk domestically, but now we're starting to gravitate into why surplus food was thrown at the side of the road during the Great Depression and things of that nature, because there were market influences that dictated that they weren't going to sell it here or bring it here because it would make it much more disruptive. So anyhow, that's a different conversation. But as far as the military is concerned, I think that people need to understand that they are the protectorate for our Western lifestyles, and without that amount of oil that they use each and every day to run those bases, we wouldn't have all of the consumer items that we have. I think that's the thing that I really want to dial in with people, is the fact that they are the police department of us in our particular lives.
Well, I know I had Corey Morningstar on my soapbox several years ago, and she just very plainly said there's no energy needs, there's only energy wants. And correct. So Right. And I agree that we should all do whatever we can in our own personal lives to help this and to educate others and to raise our children and grandchildren to be more responsible. But then we have an out of control ruling class that, they want us to sacrifice, but they don't want to sacrifice anything. So I just want to go over some comments before we go on. Our friend Otis Griffin said, #Palmerized. He's very excited you're here. Tom Drew says, management of tax dollars too. Doug St. Laurent says it's crazy. Taxation is the theftation. Wayne. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see. Kathy says the Pentagon is an ally in the cause. Say what?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and that's what I was talking about before. I mean, that's the propaganda of it, right? She hears all these different things on these, and a lot of it is not just on the right wing Fox News, right? A lot of this stuff is sold in left wing, and I hate to name, well, why not name names, like Common Dreams and certain outposts like that where they get their news, and they just assume that they aren't as bad as they're portrayed to be by someone like me or someone like you.
And then our friend Tracy Wold says, and the military, yay. Kathy Rapicon, maybe, says it used to be patriotic to stand up and speak out against the powers that be. Now some are moving backward, defending political lobbies in the Pentagon. It's shameful. Danielle says geoengineering is affecting our climate. I don't know a lot about that. Do you?
Well, I read a couple of books. One was by Clive Owen, but I'm not an expert on it by any stretch of the imagination. But I know that they are doing some nefarious stuff as far as introducing like these technological solutions into the environment that none of us are privy to. Stuff like putting dry ice on clouds and things of that nature, and trying to absorb the acid in the ocean by putting iron and metals in there. I mean, some of it is very insane. And what happens as an engineer, I can say, you do an experiment in a lab and in a controlled environment. And of course, you can go off of that outcome, but there are many more variables involved when you actually try and run your experiment in the real world. So it can be much more disruptive to do these geoengineering tactics than to just even continue down business as usual, which is killing us. Right? It could be much worse. So but there's a lot of that going on.
Liz Gilbert says she was a friend of the late great Chalmers Johnson, and she advises us to read The Sorrows of Empire. And I agree, that was a very seminal book in my development. Vincent says atomic testing took its toll too. Let us not forget that Japan wants to dump more radioactive water from the already polluted Fukushima plant into the Pacific Ocean. Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. They're already doing it. Mm-hmm. So there's no way that they've been able to amass all this water and just have it sitting in Japan, right, in some canisters or whatever. So they've already started doing it. So it's debatable as far as the numbers are concerned. I mean, I've read different things, and I don't want to put out disinformation. So I just leave it at that. But there's no way logically that they would be able to keep all that water contained in Japan. They're already releasing it into the Pacific Ocean. So, and I think that they've shown that there's heightened levels of radiation on the Pacific West Coast, and it's inexplicable as to why that's the case. So I just tell people, you do the math.
Right. Yeah. I've been in Japan several times. Well, only twice since Fukushima. And my comrades there are, working really hard to get all of the nuclear power plants shut down in Japan. But they point out that the government of Japan, they want all of the refugees from Fukushima to go back there. They say it's safe to go back and live there, which Fukushima tests way more, way more dangerous than, what was that one in Russia? that meltdown in Russia that happened?
Chernobyl.
Yeah, Chernobyl. And then nobody lives in Chernobyl. The Soviet Union's not forcing it. I mean, I'm sorry, Russia's not forcing anybody back to go live in Chernobyl, but the Japanese government's telling everybody it's safe to go back when obviously it isn't.
Well, you want to give the semblance that everything is going to be okay. I just give you an example. When they have the issue in Flint, Michigan with the water, even though our water is decrepit all across the country, but it gets a light shine on it because what was going on in Flint, Michigan. Now, what did, and I don't call him President Obama, he's Barry to me.
Right.
He's Barry to me. So Barry went to Flint, Michigan, and what was it that he did? He drank a glass of water.
Right.
Right. So it's the same thing. You want people to say, "Oh, everything's okay. You don't have to worry. Calm down, and just go back to our daily lives." Right. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Right. So it's that same type of mentality that you have to have, because if not, then you have hysteria. And what people want is just for everything to just stay calm and peaceful, and then we go about our daily lives and consume and so on and so forth. Go to our jobs, come home, watch television, so on and so forth. So that's what they're trying to do with that endeavor, and trying to move people back into that particular region. Right,
exactly. And, then if it's safe to go back, then it's also safe to
everything.
To keep the nuclear power plants going in Japan.
Correct.
So
now we have 400 nuclear power plants across the globe, and 400 plus or somewhere in that number. And it takes, I think, about 40 years to decommission a plant. So it's going to be a yeoman's task in order to actually do something like that. I wish people the best of luck with that.
Yeah.
But
right. Walter Teague says the Empire's war machine has long been aware and preparing for the coming climate immigrant, water, and food wars. Oh, climate, immigrant, water, and food wars. They will continue to get support and resources to protect the wealthy classes. Early examples are the treatment of Puerto Rico, etc. Only a mass global movement can effectively oppose both the power of the military-industrial comment and reduce or prevent the coming climate disasters. We have to keep in mind what is coming. So what do you think about this new green movement that spokesperson is Greta Thunberg? Do you think Thunberg?
Thunberg.
I'm not going to say my opinion. What's your? I think everybody here knows.
Well, I'm going to point to my comrade Corey Morningstar as far as this is concerned. I would suggest anybody go on Wrong Kind of Green website and read her series on not just Greta. And let me say this: it isn't trying to tear down a young lady. Sometimes we get blamed, me and Corey specifically, of trying to drag her down. No, what we're trying to show is that there are forces that she may not be privy to, but that are using her. I mean, think about Barack Obama, and you yourself said it, Cindy. He's the one that's bragged about how many barrels of oil that he brought to market. He went on this whole dissertation about, I've laid this amount of pipelines, so on and so forth. And then what does he do? He just recently meets with Greta. And why does he do that? For the same reason that you expressed previously, which to give the semblance that the Democrat Party actually cares about the environment.
Right.
It's no coincidence that all of a sudden, now that we're starting to gear up towards 2020, that he decides to meet with her like that. And that's to help his base, because it's still his party, that's to help his base and then be able to get people to buy into the Green New Deal and whoever it is that they're eventually going to decide to run for office. So it's nothing. It's not. She's the face of the NGO empire right now, right? The nonprofit industrial complex. She's the face of that. So you have to ask yourself who exactly is financing that, and who is she working for, even if she's not understanding of exactly who the people who are surrounding her about. Simple as that.
Right. And to me, it seems like it is her movement, and she is being they're being exploited to save capitalism and save imperialism, because the Green New Deal, like you said, is to make sure capitalism keeps going. And I think we believe that capitalism is not sustainable with a healthy environment.
Oh, it definitely not. If you look at the Green New Deal, though, let me start off with that. Once again, I'll point to the work done by my comrade Corey Morningstar. It is nothing but a boon for a different set of imperialists and industrialists, right? So you will go from somebody like Chevron or ExxonMobil to somebody like Al Gore, who has a lot of investments in this Green New Deal and green technology and things of that nature, who's going to come out ahead. Mm-hmm. So you just be transferring that money from one person or one entity to another. No more than that. That's number one. And two is that no one's really talking about, okay, well, will you just slow down the scale of carbon emissions or will you stop it? Well, all numbers point to the fact, if you look at green technology, which is a carbon sink, right? I mean, it takes fossil fuels in order to make a solar cell panel. Mm-hmm. It takes fossil fuels in order to transport any type of wind farms or anything like that. For all of that accoutrement to go to all of these different farms and places and put it in the desert, you need fossil fuels. Okay. Now, Mitt Romney, he made the joke one time, not a joke, he was serious. He's like, well, you can't put a solar cell panel on a car. And then Barack Obama, during the election, or when they were going against each other in the election, he said, yeah, you can't put a solar cell panel on a car, kind of making fun of him, like, oh, well, yeah, that's ridiculous. But yet still people need to really sit back and think. No, you can't put a solar cell panel on a car. So how are you going to transport all of these thousands of solar cells and all of the minerals that it takes in order to build these solar cells, as far as digging them up, transporting them to a corporation, and then actually put them any place it is that you think that you're going to be able to use them? How is this actually possible? Well, you're still going to have to use fossil fuels, right? That's the only source. That's the only source that we have in order to do transportation. Right? That's it. If you look at our tanker system, train system, car system, everything is based upon fossil fuels. Even if you look at electric vehicles and the way it is that we charge those are carbon sinks.
Right.
They take a lot of carbon in order to do that. In fact, the numbers show that an electric vehicle that's plugged up takes more carbon and is more intensive than just a regular car that's driving out here on the street using oil and gas. Those are just facts. So these are all things that people need to digest and understand exactly what's going on before they actually think that the Green New Deal is this panacea that's going to fix every portion of our society and economy.
Laura Salerno asked a question that I have no idea about. Isn't Greta pushing for the Paris Agreement? And isn't the Paris Agreement big on nuclear power? I'm going to, somebody's been trying to call me. So while you answer that, I'm going to go look at my phone.
Sure. As far as Greta pushing the Paris Climate Agreement, if I'm not mistaken, and my memory might be fuzzy, but I don't think that she's spoken about that to any real degree. And what I mean by that is she's been really nebulous as far as signing on to anything other than the Green New Deal. She has seemingly attached herself to that, not as far as an everyday mantra, but she has expressed that, okay, well, the Green New Deal will facilitate a lot of the Paris Agreement Accord, right? Paris Climate Agreement Accord. Now, in doing so and latching on to that, she hasn't really said, okay, well, this is going to fix our problem in any sort of way. She's been more so, as I said, a mascot for the NGOs that are supporting her, if not by money, just by allowing her name to be out there, such as like Bill McKibben, $350.org, Naomi Klein, so on and so forth. What they do is they provide her a platform, because she needs a platform at the end of the day. She needs a platform and needs to get the media to shine a light on her, so that we'll all be able to know who she is and the message she's trying to bring to the environmental issue. Now, whether or not that's going to...
Uh-oh, Forrest, I can't hear you again.
Our continuous system more than anything else.
Okay, great. So yeah, I had no idea about that. Someone says, yes, you can put a solar panel on a car. Suzanne O'Keefe.
Okay. Whoever, and I have to answer this. Okay, you can put a solar cell panel on a car. Yes, that is true. But then you have to look at the energy that's being able to generate, and then also driving at night, right? What people don't realize is that the carrying is only so strong. It's the same as with your cell phones. It's the same as with your home electronics or anything else. The thing that always keeps people from being able to take their phone and use it for 5 or 6 days straight is the battery. So for anybody that thinks that you can just jump in your car at 7 o'clock at night and then just have 10 or 12 different solar cell panels on your car, you're going to be sorely mistaken when you try and drive 60 miles away if that's the case. That's all I'll say.
Well, and also solar panels don't work everywhere. There's not sun. Don't you have to have sun for solar panels?
Exactly. Well, that's why if you look at many power plants that say that they are green, or they use solar cell panels and wind farm, this, that, and the other, most of the time at night, what they do is they transition over to fossil fuels. Right, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to still get electricity in your house, because the carrying capacity of the batteries would have to be so massive in order to take care of, say, a city like Los Angeles, where I grew up, that is impossible. It's impossible to do that.
What part of LA did you grow up? I grew up in LA.
I grew up in a little town called Linwood, California. It's about maybe 15 minutes from Compton.
I grew up in Bellflower. I was born in
Inglewood. You're right by me. Oh, yeah.
I was born in Inglewood, and I grew up in Bellflower. So, I want to mention something Vincent Garisco is saying. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Vincent. He said, because he's said it twice, and I think it really needs to be addressed. After my father honorably served in World War II and Korea, the military used him as a guinea pig in atomic testing. All they wanted was for him to quietly die. Now, my father-in-law, was in the Navy in World War II in the Pacific. And he was also used in those testings in Bikini Atoll. And the Pentagon or the DOD would call him every once in a while, and they'd say, well, how's your health, Mr. Sheehan? We're not admitting we did anything wrong, but do you have any cancer? And so he finally passed away from cancer. He was in his 90s, though. But I think that was very unusual. I think those atomic veterans paid a heavy toll for what, being involved in those tests. And not just the veterans, but come on, Bikini Atoll was completely destroyed forever.
Yeah. Well, this is all I'll say about that. There was a famous experiment in the Black community, and you may have heard of this, I'm sure you had, called the Tuskegee Experiment.
Yeah.
And what they did was they allowed Black men to have syphilis, not treat them for it, to see the long-term effects of it. So a lot of people would think that, or a lot of people do think that, okay, that was done specifically because they were Black men. But this is what I'll say. The state does not care. If the state needs to try and do some experiment, of course it's going to try and go down the path of least resistance where people won't be in an uproar over it. So the same way as disenfranchised Black people were used as guinea pigs then, who better to use for something like that than a soldier? Somebody who signed on, somebody that you can say, okay, well, they signed all of these different forms to say, okay, well, what you're doing is you're signing your life away, of course. Like my dad was in the military. Most of my friends' fathers and things of that nature that were Black men were part of the poverty draft in the post-World War II period. So they got like around 20. There were no jobs. So then they got into the military, right? Most of them did. So in that same aspect, nobody cared about them. The same thing as poor whites, more times often than not, they were going to get into the military back in the day. So those are the people that you want to run experiments on. It's the same way as when they go into a prison and they do experiments on prisoners, right? And then they'll say, okay, we'll put $10 on your commissary. So you can get some cigarettes or something like that. So you want to get these people who they can't fight back. You can run these experiments on in real time, in real life, and then go forward. So
it's actually coming up on time for us to say goodbye, even though we had difficulties and we didn't start on time. We did plan for an hour. Emma, did we lose you, or are you just on?
No, I just hid my video since I wasn't talking.
Did you see any comments somewhere else or questions that we could address in the last few minutes?
I think you got a lot of them. It looks like Vincent thanked you.
Thank you.
His father was founder and director of the International Alliance of Atomic Veterans.
Awesome.
And we did get a follow-up comment from Walter.
Can you read
Greta.
that?
Sure, I'll read that, and one or both of you can respond to that. Walter says, it is counterproductive and reactive to label Greta and all the other young leaders as puppets of the corporations. First, the young and new people coming to political awareness need the wisdom of elders. Also, some of us disagree with Morningstar's conclusions that Greta and all of the Green New Deals are controlled scams. She has inspired millions who realize there is an urgency in mobilizing to prevent catastrophic climate changes. Political people are among the demonstrations. If we know better, we should engage, not sit back. Oops. Someone else commented, so it moved. Not sit back and mouth. What I am hearing from Forrest is not all correct.
Let me just really quickly comment a little bit. So I heard Forrest say she might not know she's a puppet of the corporations and the NGOs. We disagree on Corey Morningstar's very well researched. I know Corey, and I know Corey doesn't write anything unless she knows what she's talking about. And another thing is that they need to learn from the elders, and here we are. Here we are saying that she needs and her movement needs to address the military-industrial complex, imperialism, and capitalism. And we say that she needs to do that, and then there comes people bashing us and berating us for saying that. So how is she going to learn if nobody tells her? How is she going to learn if nobody addresses this? How are we just supposed to be silent about it? Because any criticism of the weakness in that movement, and this is in my opinion, this is an astronomical weakness in the new green movement, is not addressing militarism. If we don't address it, then how are they going to learn? Are we just supposed to zip our lips because we don't want to be seen as bashing this young lady, when all we are doing is actually pointing out weaknesses in the movement? And how can the struggle advance if we don't do that? Forrest?
It won't. I mean, that's just point blank. I'm not for flowery words, things that are just going to make people feel good. I think that too many times people are looking just for someone to tell them something that they want to hear, even though it's not based in any reality. I can say, as far as Corey Morningstar is concerned, is that it's not her conclusions. Okay, if you really look at her work, all she does is provide people information. Right. She doesn't even do that much analysis. She's like, make of it what you will, and that's what I respect about her. Now, of course, I'm biased. We have worked for a long time. I'm admittedly biased. I'm on her side. We agree with each other. I will always promote her work. She is my comrade through thick and thin. So let me preface it by that. So if you're looking for some type of unbiased opinion of her, you got the wrong guy. Now, the only thing that people need to ask themselves is, in me being unbiased, is it truthful? And then all I would say is just look at the research. It's very well documented. She puts in links. She puts in pictures. I know I've read it even before most people get to it. Okay. I see the painstaking work that she has done, and I think that that is what's most relevant here. The painstaking work. Not go and read something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, don't like it, and then go about your merry lives. Corey Morningstar has spent a lot of time, a lot of years working on this stuff. I know because I've been with him. But I would say, admittedly, I am Robin to her Batman when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? You know what I mean? I take a backseat for her as far as just understanding. So, and I'll only ask one other thing because I know we're limited on time. If all these elders that she has surrounding her are so good, tell me who they are. Tell me, just give me one name. I know the gentleman or whoever was said, like, okay, well, she's just tell me, is it Naomi Klein? I mean, she's come out for the Green New Deal. Is that it? We can go over the numbers. We can go over the numbers, and then you will tell me whether or not that is the answer for zero carbon emissions. I don't think so. I have some technical knowledge. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. I'm not the smartest engineer. I'll tell you point blank, I am not Einstein, right? But I have my degree sitting up on my wall just like everybody else. So I do have some type of technical understanding of exactly how this is going to go down. So you put all that together, Corey's research, my understanding in a particular aspect, and it isn't as if we're talking, excuse my French, out of our ass, like we're making things up. You can go and look. The benchmark was 100-1 as far as oil and gas is concerned. Today is 6-1. I'm not making these numbers up. You can Google them and find them out yourself, right? If you don't trust me. But that being said, if you come to me or even Corey with specifics, we will be more than willing to, if not debate you, at least answer your question as far as why it is that we've come to the conclusions that we've come to personally. But the analysis is not present in our work. It's giving people the information and allowing them to make that decision themselves. So we don't castigate Greta. We don't say anything vitriolic towards her whatsoever. The only thing we've questioned is the people that are behind her and the groups that are promoting her. That's it.
Right. And that appears to be seen as berating her or not bashing her. You know, how dare you bash a 16-year-old autistic girl? You know, and to me, Forrest, it's the same thing as like, how dare you criticize Obama for being a war criminal? You're a racist.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like they circle the wagons around these particular individuals, right? They're like unicorns that you can't touch. So people have to see them as being greater than all the rest of us or somehow pristine.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into it, but you find this with a lot of hero worshiping, right? I know that many people might not want to hear this, but it's the same thing with Martin Luther King Jr., right? A lot of people feel as if he is perfect. As if, sorry, my dogs are barking, but they feel like he's perfect, and he's not. He did not have the answer to everything in the world, and we have to see that. We have to see that these individuals also have feet of clay. They're not. I'm not perfect.
Right.
I'm not perfect, and I think the thing is that people are looking for perfection as far as an answer to any of the problems that we have at this particular juncture, and that's not the case. What we want is truth. Not hero worship, truth. And that's all that Corey's been looking for, is just to have a honest conversation and discourse about what's wrong. And that's the only thing it is that I try and present when you talk about military and how it affects our lives, and also the environmental issue and things of that nature.
Gilbert says, let's see comparative numbers turn up at March on the Pentagon. That isn't happening because it directly challenges the status quo and is grassroots only. Truly. Thank you, Forrest, for rock solid support of Corey and one of the best investigative journalists in the world. And the only reason I support her, and I'm with you, Forrest, is that I trust her after all the years that I've been associated with her, reading her research and, speaking with her, is that she is almost 100% credible. And so, you, like Forrest said, read her stuff and then come to your own conclusions about it. And that's fine. Not everybody's going to vibe with everybody, right? It seems like a lot of people are vibing with Greta and, not liking us who don't exactly vibe with her. But I wanted to also mention that, one time Maureen Dowd from the New York Times called me the absolute moral authority, and she really effed me over by doing that. I never claimed to be an absolute moral authority, but she completely effed me over by saying that about me, right? And so because they do, they want to say, oh, look at, Cindy Sheehan, she can't be morally incorrect. So, we have to pay attention, believe. And this is when I was still a Democrat, thinking that the Democrats would end the war. So how much harm did that do? But right away, it didn't take me very long to disassociate from that. So I don't see any more questions. So.
I always say this, I don't think that praise from Maureen Dowd would be a good thing. That's all.
No, I did. It effed me up. So anyway, so a lot of people here are standing up for Cory Morningstar, as they rightly should follow her work. I've never seen anything that was contradictory or wrong in it. So
no, I will just let people know that as far as her work is concerned, she does a vast amount.
All right. Did we lose Forrest again?
He usually comes back kind of quick, but we're about an hour in, so we might just want to
we can
close. Okay. All right.
So we want to thank Forrest Palmer for being on with us today. I think it was a very awesome discussion, a very needed discussion, and for all of you for joining us, and Emma, as always, for doing our tech.
Sorry, everybody, for the delay when we started. We started about 15 minutes late. We couldn't get Forrest in.
I don't think it was on our end. So anyway, so go to marchonpentagon.com and join us and join the movement.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And don't forget to share this. And also, if you see our Rageometer posts, we're getting close to being fully outraged in our $5 donation challenge. So if you haven't tossed $5 our way yet, do that, please. And if you haven't shared it yet, or even if you have, share it a couple more times.
Also, the video of this will be available, so you can share it with friends who weren't able to make the call.
Yeah, we'll have this on our Facebook page over in the videos. It'll stay there, and I'll also get it up on YouTube, and we'll send that out in our next newsletter for everybody that is understandably not on Facebook.
Great. Thank you, everybody. You guys all rock.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully see a lot of you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
October 11th.
Okay. Talk to you later. And we'll have Forrest.
Thanks, Forrest.
Bye-bye.